Oh, baby. Episode 2. Episode 2. And by the way, next week, are we not going to be talking about... are we going to be talking about some races here, Tim?
We're going to talk about the first race of the season, Adam.
I just feel like Thursday next week's sort of a big day to circle on the calendar. It is the calm before the storm. Drive to Survive comes out tomorrow. We're going to talk about it. Tim and I have seen it, so we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show and what you can expect this year. But I'll tell you this. It's all the way back. Like there have been seasons where people are like, hey, I'm not so sure about this and whatever. Not this one.
No, Adam, don't get me started on this already.
I'm just teasing it. So,
like I'm all ready to jump into it and start talking about it.
we have some obviously some testing to go on, right? We saw the cars, we've seen the liveries, we've seen everything, and obviously, we saw the McLarens trying to protect their car as much as possible from all the photographs. Good luck with that. But Tim, the thing about testing is every car on the track at the same time on a day is testing something different than the car next to them, right? We're seeing cars with heavy fuel loads, with light fuel loads, with different tire combinations, with different combinations of sensors and that sort of thing. So you don't always really know leaving how much one team has improved or how much a driver has improved or, the other way as well. So I kind of want to go through the Constructors' Championship last year and then kind of work our way backwards. Okay.
Sure.
So, or actually, well, you know what? We're going to work our way backwards from the worst. So we're going to start with Stake F1. New driver lineup, Gabriel Bortoleto, Nico Hulkenberg. So brand new lineup, same livery. It sure is that color. But Tim, what are your thoughts on where that team was? Because it really was a lost season last year with the Sauber run team.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, I think, Adam, when we take a look at this team and where it's headed, right? I mean, Audi coming in to officially take everything over for next year, and that won't kick off obviously until 2026. But I mean, that being said, this is just a season to sort of gear them up for 2026. It's to get the team ready. It's to get new management put in place. Obviously they've got Mattia Binotto, who started late last year, and now they have Jonathan Wheatley coming over to work with them as well. He's coming over from Red Bull Racing, which is a pretty big hire for this team. And they also have others starting at the same time. And so this is just to kind of get everybody on the same page, get everyone working together, get the entire team understanding each other. I think it's great that they got Nico Hulkenberg. He's good at this, right, Adam? Like he's really good at jumping into a new team or a team that's rebuilding and helping them sort of find their way with the car and how to kind of do some processes. Having Gabriel Bortoleto is, that's going to be an interesting rookie to me. He's being put in a difficult position with a difficult car, right? Like he's not starting. Like, let's be honest here. Sauber's probably going to be the slowest team on the grid to start.
Yep.
That's not to say that they're going to be the slowest team for the entire season, but I think straight out of the blocks, Adam, they'll be the slowest.
Yeah.
And as a rookie, it can be challenging at times to learn in those conditions when the car is just really, really bad. I mean, ask George Russell, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, George was obviously able to make it through all those, pretty horrible years at Williams to get obviously to Mercedes, but those difficult, challenging cars and years that he was in, he turned out to be a really great driver. Yes. One that could possibly challenge for this year's championship, and we'll get to that later. But yeah, Adam, I think for the rookie Gabriel Bortoleto at that team is going to be a lot for him. And I think for Sauber, the best thing for them is just to create a good team and create a good team environment, something that lays the foundation for them to build off of when they turn into Audi.
Right. So it's just a build year for them.
I think so.
And really, I mean, what are you building, right? Like we got a full-blown regulation change happening next season. So you know that with a team, especially like this, that from the get-go, you don't expect them to be anywhere close to what a championship team looks like. How much development are we going to see in the car over the course of the season anyway?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that is the question. Is when are they going to turn the tap off, essentially? Yeah. When is that point going to happen within the season where you see this team really switch off development and start pouring everything into next year's car? And to be honest with you, Adam, I think they already started doing it. I really do. I don't think there's going to be, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but there could be a time starting off here where they're already focused on 2026.
Right.
I mean, I already know that some other teams that are already on that path.
Yeah.
They've already committed.
So this could be, and I hate to jump the gun on this one before we've gone through all the sort of the bottom 5 teams, but this could be a real season of have and have not. Yeah. And it was a little bit last year, but the point spread was pretty good. But this could be a season where if you're in the top 5, you're collecting the lion's share of the points. If you're in the bottom 5, you're collecting like 0 points.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Where that bottom 5 is, how serious do you want to take the season? How serious do you want to pour money into building new parts, going in a direction with your aero philosophy and all of those things? Mm-hmm. And I think also there's a flip side to all of it as well, is that how much of your car or these cars can be carried over into the next round of regulation.
Right. So you might see innovations on parts that you can carry over into the next round.
Yeah, that's, we could see not Frankenstein cars, but we could see, there will be components on these cars that will simply point towards the direction that teams are going with their philosophy for next year. Like, right. we won't really notice them. Like, we'll have to zoom in on pictures and, oh, this is a neat innovation here, right? Like circle things, like stuff like that, right? But
yeah,
I think that's where you don't have the wind tunnel test time that you would like to have. So you build a component and then you go and you test it on the racetrack, and that's the best place to test anything. Really, is on the racetrack, is in an actual race environment.
Next up, we have the fully superstarred out Williams Mercedes team. And what's interesting about Williams Mercedes is obviously signing Carlos Sainz. That's a big part of Drive to Survive this season. And obviously, retaining Alex Albon. They probably have the friendliest pair of drivers on the entire grid. Not to say that they're not competitors, because they both very much are fierce competitors. Last season was a bit of a disaster, especially at the start for Williams. They'd had a good 2023 by their standards, but last year, you don't have your tubs ready. And then, Alex Albon sort of hits a wall and Logan Sargent can't race, and they're still trying to update systems within the team that are 20 years old.
Yep.
Where does Williams stand now after testing? What did you see from their car? What did you see from Carlos?
They're headed in the right direction. I'd said this before on the pod we had done last week. I think their technical chief, Pat Fry, working alongside team principal James Valls, they've done a great job in getting this team pointed on the straight and narrow. And I think behind the scenes at the factory, and things that we don't see, is that they have the team working in unison. Mm-hmm. Although in tough conditions, because, let's face it, they still have old manufacturing machines within their factory that do need to be replaced. Some of them are already being replaced, but that is going to be, years of a journey in trying to get that factory reformatted. The driver pairing is, I think, one of the stronger ones on the grid. I don't think a lot of people give Carlos Sainz the respect that I think he deserves, really. Yeah. If we go back to the first time we launched this podcast, I said that, this is a driver to watch out for. This is going to be a very talented driver who, at some point could win races, and sure enough, he did. He one year he was the only, one of the only ones to win races, right? Outside of Max Verstappen. So, I mean, look, they've got a really great driver pairing. I think Carlos has already really started to push them. I spoke with James Vowles about this recently, and he already had mentioned to me, the amount of work Carlos had put in with the team at the factory, getting them pointed in the right direction and really pushing everybody to start development and going in a direction with the car. And then for Alex Albon, for him, this is going to be an interesting season. He was the team leader, right, Adam, for a really long time. And this is where we're going to see a bit of that, that sort of power and politicking kind of going on, I think, here as well, right? It's who is going to be this team leader, who is going to be your number one driver, because we both know that James Vowles does believe in that. And I believe in it too. I think you should have a number one and a number two driver. Not to say that these two guys are going to get dust ups and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it could happen, right? I mean, the thing is, Carlos still really wants to keep himself very relevant. He still wants to show Ferrari that they made a mistake in letting him go. And, Adam, towards the end of last season, you and I could have both made the argument that at that point, Ferrari may have made a big mistake. But we'll see how that plays out, obviously, right? We're going to see how all that plays out. But at the end of the day, I really like this driver lineup. I really think this team's going to do some big things. Carlos set the fastest time in Bahrain during testing.
Yes. So I thought that was interesting. Does that mean something?
No, I think that was a bit of a glory. That's obviously a glory run, right? That's like, all right, let's drain the tanks, boys, and see what we got. It's one of those. But I think also it's going to be a competitive car. They haven't thrown the old car in the dumpster. They've just built upon the foundation that they laid with the big upgrade they introduced midway through last season. And I think coming into this season, Adam, I could see them at some point, if they stay on track and if they develop this car the way they want to, I can see them picking up a podium here or there in some races.
Wow.
100%.
Okay, now there's a take, Tim. That's exciting to hear. I like that. For a ninth place team last year, that would be an enormous improvement. You can imagine the celebrations.
Huge.
Crazy. At number 8 last year, we had the Racing Bulls, Visa, Cash App, VCAR, whatever. Now they're just Racing Bulls. So this is former Toro Rosso, former AlphaTauri. This is the Red Bull junior team. Finished 8th last year with 46 points. Again, a half revamped driver lineup because Liam Lawson has moved up, Daniel Ricciardo has retired, and Isaac Hadjar is jumping in with Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki, we know, is an established Formula One driver, fantastic driver, does make mistakes, does get hot-headed, but there's so much talent there. Isaac Hadjar, unless you're watching Formula 2 regularly, you might have missed that he's pretty talented as well.
Yeah.
And, I think I saw a quote the other day. He thinks, hey, listen, and this is where I love supreme confidence in drivers. He's like, well, why can't I be as good as Max Verstappen? And that's what somebody his age should be coming in and saying and doing and thinking, I think. What do you think about this team this year? What did you see in testing in terms of the car and the drivers?
The car looked okay. I think the team felt that it was a successful test in Bahrain. They didn't have a ton of car issues, but they just didn't look fast. Like they just didn't look all that competitive. I'm not saying that they're going to be one of the slower teams out of the gates.
But you're not saying that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really, because they didn't really impress. It didn't impress me, right? I wasn't impressed. I mean, I think the car looks fantastic. I think it's one of the nicest looking cars on the grid.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
They accumulated a lot of run plans. Having a total of 454 laps. Yuki setting one of the faster times with a minute 30. I think it was like a minute 30.4. That's quite a ways off of what we saw Sainz and Williams, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull do and McLaren. Sorry, should have led with that one. And so I see RB maybe starting off as the 6th, 7th fastest team on the grid. I think Isaac Hadjar he has a lot to learn, I think. Not saying that he can't do it, obviously.
But any rookie would, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's not a thing on him.
Just watching a lot of his onboard camera, I mean, just not smooth. Like, not smooth with the wheel. He looked very aggressive with the steering wheel. It didn't look like he was connected to the car. Right? It didn't look like he was one with it. It looked choppy. And so that's just going to be experience. That's just going to be doing more runs, fine-tuning that, because those are huge details. And people may watch on TV and they may not see it. I mean, I see it. But that's one of the things that's going to hold him back. What's going to move him forward is ironing out those details, trusting the car, believing in it, and then sort of becoming one with it. Finding a rhythm with the car, finding the right balance that suits him, makes him a little bit more comfortable, because in a race car, you're never comfortable. You just got to try and find a happy balance where you're somewhat comfortable, and you can kind of push that limit. But for Hadjar, it looks like he's got a lot of work to do. That's not saying that he can't do it. And I think with enough work, and I think if they just leave him alone, I honestly think, Adam, there's a good rookie in there.
What if they go to the media and trash him after 3 or 4 races? What do you think about that?
I don't think that's productive. I've always said that, Adam. I just don't think that's productive. Like, show me where that's productive.
I don't know how that helps. It's what they do, but I don't know how it helps. And with Yuki with this car, obviously we'll get a better sense of the car right off the bat with how Yuki handles it, because he's the pro. Right. And as you always say, it takes rookies, if you can get them this far, usually about 3 years to really grab what Formula One is. So, Isaac's one of 6 rookies on the grid. That is going to be a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
But for Yuki in that car, what did you see from him?
Yeah, he looks good. He looked comfortable. I like Yuki. I think he's a really, really talented driver. I think for him, it's just going to be controlling the emotions at times, and that's a very difficult thing to do. But
kidding.
It really is. I mean, Adam, you saw me on the sim the other day, and
we got some news for you on that on the later in the show. It's great. It does get your blood up, doesn't it?
Yeah, you get pretty heated.
Just a sim.
Yeah, it's just a sim. So you can imagine what it's like in an actual, race car. It's got 1,000 horsepower, and you're you're trying not to stuff it. So I think for Yuki, if he can get that a little more under control, not to saying that he hasn't, I actually think he's done a good job in that department, which is really challenging to do. I like what I see from Yuki. I really do. I think this is going to be I don't want to say make or break season for him, but this is going to be an important season. There's not much Honda can do for him moving forward, right?
Right.
I mean, Honda's going to Aston Martin now, and they've got their driver lineups, and Honda's a big part of Yuki and his program, but I don't think they're going to be able to do much for him outside of that. And I think for Red Bull itself, I think he could have a chance of sticking around if he really impresses and he outdoes Hadjar by significant amounts. Mm-hmm. Then I think that Yuki has a shot of sticking around. If he does struggle this season, I don't know if he sticks around in Formula One.
Got it. Wow. So it is a big kind of make or break season for him.
It's a big season
Ferrari,
for him, yes.
They finished 7th last year, a real surprise 7th place. And first season under Io Komatsu, first time that Haas has had a team principal other than Gunther Steiner since they came into the sport. Mm-hmm. And had a veteran lineup, had Nico Hülkenberg, had Kevin Magnussen. It's a different lineup this year completely. Mm-hmm. It's Esteban Ocon, and it's the very exciting Oliver Bierman, who we got to see at Jeddah last year, finished 7th place in that Ferrari in place of Carlos Sainz, who was having appendicitis surgery. This is an interesting lineup. Esteban Ocon, by the way, has been really hard on every teammate he's ever had. This is not a guy like if, all these guys are like, yeah, I'm not here to make friends, and then they're all friends with each other. Esteban quite literally is there not to make friends. Not that he's not a kind, polite person, but when he's in the car, he's tough as nails. What does he bring to this Haas team? How did he look in testing?
I like Esteban, Adam. You know that?
Yeah, I do too. I think he's a great driver.
I really like Esteban. I think this was a great signing by Io Komatsu. I think he's going to do wonders for this team. And it's, part of his job is helping Ollie Behrman get up to speed. Do I think Ollie Behrman needs a lot of help getting right up to speed? I mean, looking at testing, I would say no. Ollie looked pretty good. Yeah, I mean, the fastest lap that the team did set was by Esteban. But that being said, Haas didn't have any incredible, they didn't have any headline grabbing times. They just didn't. They didn't look too spectacular. They kind of looked meh, but that's how they started last season as well. They sort of started last year with that, they look okay. You're not really too sure. I mean, this is probably the 8th or 9th fastest team. And then right out of the gates, boom, they're quick all season long. Impressive qualifying performances, fighting for, top spots in the Constructors' Championship standings, top spots for Haas. And so I think with this driver lineup, I think it's a very strong one. And even though we didn't see any flashes of brilliance, from their testing, it was solid. They had the second amount of laps totaled, I believe, which is, for a Haas, that's very impressive. They about 457 laps, if I'm not mistaken, with their test program. I believe that was just behind Mercedes. And so that's important to know that you've got that reliability, but it's good, all the data you're going to get from it. I mean, they did have something. They had some bodywork fall off the car, which was quite strange. They had a piece fly off the car and smash a window, apparently. And
not great, not ideal.
No, not ideal, obviously. But I think they're hiding a lot of pace. I really think that car has got a lot of pace, and I think they did a great job in hiding it.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens come season start.
Yeah.
Ollie Behrman, I just want to quickly touch on him. As a driver, you mentioned Isaac Hadjar had a little bit of choppiness. How did you find Ollie Behrman's connection to his car? Do you think there was a little bit more ease to it because he's done it? There is it's important to know because of those hybrid turbo engines, there's a huge difference between an F2 and an F1 car, and the F2 cars last year were bad. They were just bad cars.
Yeah.
Right? So how did Ollie look?
He looked good. You have to remember he's coming in with F1 experience.
Yes.
I mean, I know he's qualified as a rookie, but I mean, I'd say the same thing with Liam Lawson as well. But for Behrman, he's had time in these cars, right? He's done a ton of time in the Ferrari sim. He obviously, like you had mentioned, Adam, raced for Ferrari in Saudi Arabia last year, and then obviously doing a ton of time with Haas as well, racing for Haas. And so he has that F1 experience, so to speak, coming in. So I'm not expecting him to, really struggle all that much. I think he's going to be able to keep up with Esteban straight out of the gate. He may not be out qualifying him for a while because there's still a lot to learn and to unlock that potential and that pace in quali. In learning the car and where that limit is and how that feels and all those things. But I can see him having a strong season. I can see him as one of the stronger rookies. I think they've got a good platform that's a drivable car. And I think that's the most important thing with this regulation. It's making sure that the drivers have a car that they can drive, not necessarily chasing downforce, downforce points, right? The teams need to start building these cars so these drivers can really lean into their talents to extract the performance from the car. And that's so important now with these regulations that we've learned up to this point. So yeah, Adam, I'm excited to see what Ollie can do. this season. What do you think about this team? I mean, Haas is interesting, man.
I think they're exciting. You just never really know what you're going to get. You know, they had that 5th place finish several years ago. Well, actually, more than several years ago now. For them to finish 7th last year, I think was a surprise to everybody. I think that everybody had them pegged for a 9th or a 10th. And, you know, Nico had a great year. Kevin was like running pretty crazy. Total, like, collect as many penalty points as you can to get the team some points too. And it really did pay off for them. I like how gritty and gutsy they are. They're a team you can sort of root for, that you hope one day you're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, wouldn't it be cool if they got on the podium? Wouldn't it be cool if they won a race one day? Like, that's a team that I think that can be a cult favorite, like it always kind of has been.
Yeah.
So I from a fan perspective, I love Haas. I think they're a fun team when they're not completely dysfunctional and blowing the car up. So hopefully that's not this year. Moving on to, speaking of blowing up, Alpine, their last season with a Renault engine, Tim. Last season with a Renault engine. After this, it's all over. They're moving to Mercedes, power units, gearboxes, and all that stuff. It's interesting because they finished 6th last year, which I think is a better result than they thought they might get, considering how that car started. It was awful to start the year. Gasly and Ocon were at the back of the grid regularly. It started to improve. You started to get a little bit of life from those drivers. I think specifically Pierre Gasly after Monaco, after Ocon hit him. I think Pierre really hit a new gear in his career, given what he was put in. What's this team going to be on a lame duck engine program?
Well, I mean, if you're Flavio Briatore, you're looking for constructors championships in 2027.
Yep.
So that's a thing.
That's what he wants.
So I think that expectation needs to be tampered just a bit. I like that that's where, you know, his head is at. That's going to take some time. I think with this team, if you're not, I mean, look, it's a team with an engine program that's on the outs. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get much performance from that straight off the hop. I mean, that's going to be whatever you came in with or ended last year with. That's most likely what you're coming into this season with as well, with very little in terms of performance gains. But the car looked good. It did look good in testing compared to where it was last year, like you had mentioned, Adam, where they started off. I mean, that was a fat car. It was heavy. It was like me. It was overweight. So they had to bring the weight down on that thing, and that took a lot of time. Mm-hmm. But then once you started to see them refine the car, fine-tune it, it started to come back to the drivers. And then once it started to do that, you started to see the potential that was in this car. Now, I don't think last year each driver had the same equipment at each races. You know, they swapped some races. Esteban had all the new components, other races. Pierre did. And I think for this year, the main focus should be, if there's components coming to the car, they have to be for both drivers. That, I think, is a key thing for this team. If they want to do well in this Constructors' Championship, that has to be a massive priority for them, to make sure that when components come to the car, that goes to both drivers. You can't play favoritism in that, because you're going to lose out on potential points within a race, which obviously, you know, costs you in the Constructors' Championship. They had a decent test. You know, they're one of the teams that broke that, 400 lap record, which is good. That's a lot of testing mileage under their belts. Mm-hmm. Oliver Oakes, who's their team principal now, he's really got the team focused. And I think, one of his mandates was just to make sure the team focused on themselves for that test. That was a big mandate from him. And he was happy with how all that went down. He was happy with Jack Doohan, which I think is obviously going to be a pretty big story. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a story, Adam. And you and I have already spoken about this at length. Gasly set their fastest time. I think it was like a minute 30 flat or something like that. That's one of the more competitive times that was out there. Again, we don't know fuel loads. We don't know engine modes. We don't know any of those things. I think this is a team, Adam, that's going to be up there with Williams. I think this team has a chance of, one of those off races where they could pick up a podium here or there. I think they're going to be either the fifth or sixth fastest team. I think it's going to be that Williams Alpine starting things off. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one for Jack, but it was good to hear from Oliver Oakes and him saying that he was really happy with what Jack had done during testing.
Going to be fascinating with Franco Colapinto waiting in the wings, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Adam, look, it's kind of that sort of Red Bullish sort of, programs where it's like have someone underneath who's going to be able to put pressure on one of the drivers you want to see excel.
Right.
Because you've invested, like Jack's had a lot of investment put into him from this, Renault program. I was a part of that program, me and along with, many other Canadians as well. And it was a very competitive program. And right. I think they are really trying to retool that and make it what it, used to be. And I think bringing Franco over sort of sets that tone a bit. For Jack, is those first, I think, 4 or 5 races, just be there with Pierre. Don't get blown out of the water, but you don't need to go head over heels to try and beat him. I mean, right. Even though you want to, but when you start to push and try and do things and really when you really try to overwork it, even in the car, you tend to go slower. So it's trying to find that happy balance.
So Aston Martin is an interesting one, Tim. This is a team that had such a great year the season before. They were looking fast. Fernando Alonso was excited about the car. The car started to fall off, and they just seemed to go a completely wrong direction with the development of it. And I'm just curious, how did it look on the track?
It didn't look great. Okay. It looked like it was a challenge. It doesn't help that, both drivers did get, ill. Fernando, I believe he was recovering from a cold or something, but then Lance got really sick on the last day of testing, just the night before. He tried to push through it, but he was just too sick. He did his best, but he just couldn't keep going. It was pretty rough day for him. He did set the fastest lap for the team, and they totaled over around 305, 306 laps, which is not great. I've heard reports that this is a car that Adrian Newey can use as a blank canvas. That's not. I don't think that's going to be happening. This is more along the lines of, let's just try and get through the season with what we got. Yeah. And, main focus is for next year. It's for 2026. I mean, Adrian started work the start of this week on Monday. And his mandate is to work on the 2026 car. Like that is it. Enrico Cardile can't start with the team until, I believe it's July now. So that's going to be a huge setback for the team as well. So Dan Fallows, obviously he's been moved off of the project. So that's going to leave everything in Eric Blondin's hands to run aerodynamics. And that's a huge job. I think their front suspension probably should have went in the same direction as what McLaren, what Ferrari, what Mercedes are doing. Red Bull Racing as well, because they are one of the first to introduce that type of suspension system of the pull rod, push rod, et cetera, et cetera. Aston Martin didn't go that direction. I think they probably should have. It's something that I actually spoke to one of the team personnel about last year. So I think it could be a difficult season for them starting off. That's not to say that they're not going to be any good. I still think that there's some potential here and in the car. But yeah, I think, it wasn't a great test. I don't think I would rule it out as basically this is a new sort of type of car that we've got, and we've got to kind of learn with bare bones that's already on this thing, and let's see where we can sort of take it. They have a lot of managerial changes that have happened, obviously behind the scenes, Adam. Andy Cowell coming in as CEO last year, now taking over team principal duties. Mike Crack got moved to, doing more trackside operations, which is what he wanted to do. And there were some things in the press, like it was like he had to take a step down, and this is, this is a bad thing and whatever. It's actually something that's in his wheelhouse. He's actually really strong at that. And so I think that's Andy Cowell putting people in places of strengths, which is, what has to happen now, right? Like that's his job. He's got to try and put people where he thinks they're going to be strong within the team, because that is what's needed now when you have so much talent now coming to the team. And so this is a long-term project. It's going to take time. It just is. I mean, it's exciting. It's a Canadian-owned operation. Has a Canadian driver as well. I think that's all very exciting. But this is a project that's going to take some time.
Yep. Fifth place, moving to fourth, we have Mercedes, just Mercedes, and another revamped lineup halfway anyway. Kimi Antonelli coming in, 19 years old, and fully looked 19 years old or less on Drive to Survive. My wife saw him. She's like, he is a child. Like, he's a literal child. They're going to put him in that. Really great pieces, and we won't get into it too much just yet, on George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, and Kimi. George Russell can be the team leader this year. He can establish himself as the team leader, is the team leader right now, but now he needs to seize it. What did the car look like? What did George look like?
They look great. I mean,
okay, great.
They clocked they had over 450 laps accumulated across the 3 days of testing, which is, that's huge, man. When you can kind of do stuff like that, that's a big testing program that they put together. I think, you know what, Adam, I've heard from some people in the paddock and some conversations that some people have had with, Mercedes, and Mercedes seems pretty confident with what they have. And we don't usually hear stuff like that. I mean, Mercedes is usually the car is not, it's okay or whatever. They usually are pretty good. Down. Yeah. They're usually pretty good with kind of showing you and telling you where we're at, what we think. But they sounded pretty confident, man. I'm going to tell people right now, I think this is probably it's going to be the second fastest car on the grid. I think this is going to be the second fastest team on the grid. I think it's going to be.
Don't tell us who's going to be the first fastest. Don't tell us that yet.
Well, I think we all know who that's going to be. Sure, okay, for sure. But I think it looks promising, man. They had a really good test. George Russell dipping into the 129s. I think he was a 129.5 with one of his fastest laps as well. And I mean, for Antonelli, it's definitely going to be learning. It's a learning season, man. He's done a ton of testing in the wintertime, right? Let's be honest here. He's been doing quite a bit of testing in old F1 cars. But I still when you jump into these new machines, it's still a ton of stuff to learn. Yeah. He definitely has his work cut out for him. I think George is he's getting into that sort of, he's starting to peak, right? His confidence is at the right height. He's finally got the car, I think, that he needs. And man, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about George battling for a championship. Really wouldn't.
Wow. How did Kimi look?
He looked good. He's a rookie, right? It's going to take time. I mean, Mercedes has invested a lot into him. I believe that, I believe that it could be a bit of a struggle starting off. But I think they have a lot of talent there. I think he's a very talented driver. He just needs the mileage. He just needs the mileage, needs to learn. I don't see him winning any Grand Prix this year. I really don't.
But it could be a good sort of starter car and a good sort of starter year for him.
For sure. I mean, if they got a car that makes him feel, like I said, somewhat comfortable, that's a good place to start from. That's a good place to learn from, right? You can trust the car, so then you can start experimenting and doing different things with your style, your driving style, and then learning from George as well. He's a good teammate to learn from, and that's what I think for Kimi, and that's what Toto has said is just, hey, like I believe Toto has said to him, like, hey, you've got to learn. This is a learning year. We've invested this time for you to learn. So if he's going to make mistakes, he will make mistakes. All right, but I think they have some really good talent there.
Right.
Just got to extract it out of them.
Now, let's move up to Red Bull. So this is an interesting one because Red Bull had the most dominant car of all time 18 months ago, and they fell to third in the constructors last year. That's largely due to Max being phenomenal and Sergio falling off. And so Liam Lawson has jumped in to take Sergio's position. And the car, according to Sergio, started to go wrong in that really dominant 2023 season. But because Max basically walks on water and he's an incredible driver, the team really didn't believe it until Max started to report the same things. What's Red Bull this year, Tim, to start?
That's a great question. I don't think any of us know because they showed up with a car that looked eerily similar to last year's car. I mean, Christian Horner did say that this thing has been refined more. I mean, there's a lot of details underneath that we haven't seen that are new. But for the most part, Adam, I mean, if you see a side-by-side image of both of these cars, RB20, RB21, they looked very similar. And it has me wondering if they have a bigger upgrade package that's coming later this year. Because I just can't believe that they've started where they started from, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the evolution that McLaren and Ferrari have made, same with Mercedes as well, with James Allison has done a great job on, by the way, but it still looks the exact same. Hasn't really had a huge evolution. And that leads me to believe that something bigger is coming for them later in the season.
So maybe race 4 or 5, they get an upgrade and it's like a big monster step forward.
Adam, I think it's going to be later than that. I have a feeling, I don't know anything on this, it's just a gut feeling that when we get to Spain and we have that flexi wing clamp down come into play, I think that's where we're going to see a different Red Bull. I really do. And I think is kind of one of those things where this is just how I feel, right? It's just from looking at everything and going through all the data, it kind of seems like, okay, if you're Red Bull, you're going to take a bit of pain to start things off.
Okay.
Right? Then you're going to be able to come back and come back strong.
Okay.
Where it could be like last year where Max got off to an incredible start, accumulated all the points that he could. Then everybody else started to catch them. They dropped back, and Max held on because he's incredible.
Right, because he's Max.
Where this year, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to be, this is where they're going to start slower, but then once we get deeper into the season, they're going to progress and get stronger
and build.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Liam's tests?
It was okay. The car, like I was saying, like Adam, the car just didn't seem right. Like they had water pump issue, I believe, on the second day of testing. That was Liam's full day in the car, so they missed a lot of running. He missed a lot of running.
Right. And
then Max, obviously, he had his runs as well. Most of them came on the final day of testing where he had the car for the day. When you're slapping FlowViz on your car on the last day of testing at night when testing is winding down, to me, that signals that there's something going on there. Like you got some issues you're trying to sort out and figure out where you can improve. Because usually teams use the Floviz mostly at the beginning of testing. They don't really go too much towards it towards the end of testing because they've already got things sort of dialed out in that department.
Right.
To see that was strange to me. However, Max did set a pretty competitive time.
He's Max?
Because he's Max, but I also think because he was able to finally find a balance with the car that he liked. I mean, I think he was like 129.5 or something like that. So he was up there where George was. But I think it's just it kind of seemed like it was the car was particular, and it needed small little minute changes here, there, and there for Verstappen to sort of extract the performance from the car. For Lawson, Adam, I want to get your thoughts on this, but I mean, like Verstappen's a machine, man. Mm-hmm. You're going to be going up against
eats teammates alive.
He does.
It's going to be interesting.
It's kind of like, is he like a lion looking at like a piece of steak that he's just going to bat around? Or like, what is this going to be, right? We just don't really know. I mean, Lawson's got a lot of confidence, and I like that.
He does. Me too. That's what I think. I feel like that confidence could carry him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he's either going to be one of two things. Maybe one of three things. He's either going to be a surprise, where it's like, wow, I didn't expect this, and this is fantastic and good for him. Or he's going to be, this is kind of where I expected, sort of right in the middle. He's going to have some mistakes. He's going to be competitive some races. He's going to struggle some races. Or there's the third one where it's just going to be an absolute disaster.
Well, I hope it's not that one. It's way more fun if these drivers are competitive. So two more teams here, Tim. Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, all eyes on that driver pairing. And rightfully so. What did you see from testing?
I love how excited you got there.
Oh, Adam. It's great. It's great.
It's fantastic. What did I see? I saw a very competitive car, that's for sure. I mean, there's so many different components to this, Adam. And, you could focus all on Lewis for this entire section, but I think it's only fair to kind of, brush over the team, and we can get deeper into them, in a later pod, because there's a lot happening at the team at the moment. Very competitive. Hamilton setting the team's fastest time. He was also again in the 129s. I think he might have been faster than George. I think he was 129.3 or something like that by like a tenth. But not a lot of laps, right? 382 laps. It's okay. That's okay. I mean, they didn't break the 400 lap barrier like a lot of the other teams did. I think if you're Lewis, you needed as much mileage as you can get, and he got hampered in the last day for the mileage department. The team had found something on the data that they didn't like, so they brought Lewis in, and he lost quite a bit of track time because of it. It's all about that. For Lewis, it's all about that, learning the team, learning the environment, learning the car, learning the steering wheel, which we did a feature on that on TSN that hopefully, I think that airs next week. It's really, really good. I digress. For Leclerc, I think for him, it's just like trying on it's trying on a glove, right? It just fits him. Just the way it is. I think he's going to be fine. I will be interested, Adam, if we get to race one, and all of the noise and the celebrations around Lewis being at Ferrari, and Leclerc goes and sticks it on pole.
Oh man! Okay? Now we'll move on to McLaren, and then we're going to do a little quick thing on Drive to Survive. McLaren won the World Championship last year. I know everybody focuses on the drivers, but McLaren did win the team, and the team will tell you the team one is more important to the team. Obviously, Lando's looking for a World Championship.
Not this year, baby.
Yeah, Oscar's looking for a World Championship this year. Does McLaren have the fastest car on the grid, Tim?
Yes.
I'm a McLaren fan, so great. All right, now who looked better?
Oscar looked good, man. He looked good. He looked really good. So did
really.
Yeah, Lando looked good too. Oscar set the fastest time for the team. Again, all the times on this pod when I'm saying set the fastest time, like we don't know fuel loads, we don't know engine modes, so that's a huge difference. Okay, so we just don't know. But Oscar looked really good on the performance runs. The long runs, so the race simulations, he did look like he struggled a little bit, maybe trying a little too hard and overheating the tire and then screwing the tire. Because as soon as you drive a bunch of heat through the tires, man, you're done.
Yeah.
Where Lando, I was on, I believe it was day 2. His testing long runs were really good.
Oh boy.
Oh man, he blew everybody out of the water. It was crazy. He looked good.
Boy.
He looked good. I mean, I would expect Lando Norris to pick up right where he left off.
Okay.
Right, coming into this year.
Wow.
The thing is where's Oscar going to start from? He's coming into Australia. That's his home race, dude. Like, man, I think Oscar is going to give Lando everything he can handle this year. Really do. I think for Andrea Stella, he's got his work cut out for him. Same with Zach Brown. You saw what happened last year in Hungary with those two drivers.
Yeah.
And what do you think's going to happen this year? And, I like, McLaren, like, no papaya rules and all this stuff. And there shouldn't be to start the year, and there won't be. But is that a mistake?
Well,
that's going to be the question, right? You think about it for a second, but I think you let the both of them race, let them sort it out. Don't crash into each other. If I'm team principal, do not crash into each other. You crash into each other, you're paying for it. That's what I would say. I would get a contract that would say that as well. And then let them go race fairly, aggressively, hard, but don't take each other out. Then see who comes out on top after, 5, 6, 7 races. Let's see where they shake out. And then once things sort of the picture starts to become clearer as to which driver is it going to be who's going to fight for the driver's title, that's who you back. That's what I would do if you wanted to do it fairly. So we'll see how they handle it. Adam, you're a team principal. What are you going to do? You've got 2 number 1 drivers.
Oh, man, you let them fight it out. Let them fight it out until there's a clearer head. But you gotta be real careful with how you race each other, because they're gonna. I have a feeling they're gonna be within a car or 2 of each other most of this year. Got to be very careful about that.
100%.
Got to be very careful about that. Okay, so Tim, that brings us through the grid, through testing. What we do also need to talk about, and this comes out tomorrow, March 7th, is Drive to Survive. It's that part of the season again. And what is amazing about watching Drive to Survive this year is how in-depth it gets with just about everything. And it starts with Lewis and Ferrari, and then Christian Horner and the allegations made against him. And they go into Jos Verstappen and Christian Horner butting heads. It's kind of mind-blowing that they didn't just brush over it. They dove right in.
It was great.
Great.
The first 2 episodes, I thought were brilliant. Try not to give too much away. I don't want to give away any spoilers. But for all the stuff that was happening in Bahrain, like we were, I was there for that. Like we were right there for it, all of it. And it was kind of, for me, just reliving those 2 weeks that I was there. It was basically
when all that stuff leaked and stuff,
just
too.
Everything. Yeah, everything. And so I thought they did a very great job at capturing all of it. I mean, they filmed some stuff that that did not make it.
I was surprised it made it.
Well, some of the things did not make it. So
yes, yeah.
Which is fair. But I think when you're diving into that story, you do have to tell it fairly. And I think that I thought Netflix did a great job handling all of it.
Right.
I remember you and I trying to handle it.
Oh man, it was a hot potato, right? Like you just didn't know what was going to happen next. And I can remember I was saying to my wife, like when we went through it, I'm like, oh man, I remember this. I forgot about that, whatever. And then the Zach Brown comments, and they dive right into that too.
Oh yeah.
And how much Zach Brown and Christian were like butting heads, and not just rivals on the track, and Zach having an issue with the two team setup that Red Bull has, but like literally the allegations. And he said it in the room with Christian there, like, oh man.
So Adam, you remember? I don't know if you remember that there's a shot where Zach kind of like over his shoulder says like, I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, oh, what a day, huh? Or something like that. I don't know if you remember that. He's walking through a block. Okay, so me and Chris Medlin are like right, like he's saying that to us. Like,
oh,
because we were
right
like,
there.
Yeah, we were walking sort of with him, and then the camera from Netflix was kind of like in between us. And so I was like, oh, man.
So that's a conversation you and Chris were having. That's crazy.
Well, Chris and I were I can't remember if it was Chris that said something to Zach. I can't remember how it all went down, to be honest with you. But it was I don't know if Zach was saying it to us or if he was saying it to the camera or if he knew the camera was there. But I just remember like walking, and then the Netflix people kind of like cut right in between us, and that's when Zach kind of like was turning around to talk to us, sort of thing, and like it was a whole it was a whole thing. But it's like no, man, we were all there. I mean, like the journalists were all leaving. That was when we were all leaving the press conference together.
Still cool.
We all have to go through the same doors, right? We all have to walk together and all that stuff. So
still very cool.
I mean, we're with these guys a lot, right? So it's.
Yeah.
It's all
other
part
things
of
that that Drive to Survive touches on this year, and it is really like rocket fuel. This season, it's amazing. It talks about how they came to the decision to get Kimi Antonelli, how Toto felt when Lewis left. If Flavio Briatore finally gets an introduction, and he's such an interesting character. If you're not familiar with his history. Tim, what were some of the other highlights for you without giving too much away?
Yeah, I know it's so tough, right? Because I don't want to like spoil everything, but I liked how, for this year, I liked how grounded the series was.
Right.
They didn't make things up, is what I want to say. I thought they covered everything fairly, and they did Formula One and the stuff that I see. We're all kind of, all of us as journalists, insiders, etc. We all kind of are involved in, and I thought they really covered everything quite well. And I thought they showed that quite well. I mean, you still have those every once in a while. You can see them, those staged like two shots where it's like. Toto and his wife out on the balcony sort of thing, chatting, and that doesn't feel genuine. Mm-hmm. But then there are other moments where that camera's like peeking behind a door, and they're actually getting something, and you're just like, ooh. And you just, and even me, like I just like, oh, I had no idea. So even for myself, who's a part of the sport so much, Adam, it still opens the doors for me, and it's just like, oh wow, I didn't know that, or wow, he said that, I can't believe that, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great season.
It is. It's Adam, I think it's one of my that's my favorite. I think I'll say that
of all of them.
I think that's my favorite season.
Wow. Yeah. Some really great insights into who Lando Norris is, really great insights into who George Russell is too.
Yeah.
I really liked that. I think you got to know those guys just a little bit better on a human level. And I think that's what's so special about the show. People worry so much about, wow, is this rivalry real or is they making it up, and blah, blah, blah. I think what it does is it humanizes these drivers. They're not just guys with helmets on, putting on, fire suits. They're real human beings who have very different attitudes towards winning. And I think the way that Lando put it was, you can win in a million different ways. It's just what's your way.
And I think also, Adam, like for me, it does a great job of really showing their sense of humor, like everybody's.
Yes.
And I think that's very important because, when I come on here and, we talk about the drivers and the team principals and, people who work behind the scenes or whatever, for the most part, everybody has a really great sense of humor. It is a lot of fun. Like everybody does, people do get along. Like a lot of people get along. A lot of teams get along. I mean, there are their differences. There are their political differences, which they all have and they should. But for the most part, I thought it did a great job of just showing their showing their sense of humor, because a lot of them are extremely funny, Adam. Like,
yes, absolutely.
They just are. Like, so it's I thought it was a great season. I thought Netflix did a great job with it. It's my favorite. I don't know where it ranks for you, but
I'm gonna have to think about that. That's your favorite. I'm like, ooh, maybe that's influenced my answer now. But yeah,
well, no,
that's awesome.
It's my favorite because like it felt more genuine, realistic. The storylines were fleshed out properly, and I think Netflix did what they wanted to do with that season. They got some runway on that, and I think it's a great, because some of it I think Adam kind of felt like it was starting to tail off.
Yes, absolutely.
This has brought me back in.
All of a sudden it was like, whoa, boy, they've put a whole new. It's just whatever the gear was, they've hit the new one.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's that, but as Toto always says, it's like Top Gun. But this was like Top Gun Maverick, like next level, great. So very excited for everybody to see it. We're going to be back next Thursday with some surprises for you as we get ready for our very first race weekend in Melbourne, Australia. So Tim, have a great week until then, and the fun starts next week. We're right here.
Adam, you're not going to give anybody like a little like taste of what?
I can't. I simply can't. Just know this. We got Tim in a driver's seat. We'll just put it that way. So we will see you next week. And Tim, have a great week, my friend.
All right. Thanks, buddy. See ya.